Hello everyone, welcome to Music is a Journey. I'm Peter Scove, and it looks like this is going to be the final video of the year. Originally I had actually planned to do one more, however I'm not sure if I'll have time for that or not before the new year rolls around. Maybe I might. Okay, this might be the second last, the penultimate video of the year. So what's this video topic about? Well, as I put in the thumbnail, you probably saw it. I'm going to tell you about my 2023 releases that I bought this year. I actually do not usually buy very many new releases as they come out. There are a few bands that I always get their new stuff, I pre-order it. There might be a couple of albums that I hear about that I think I've just got to have it, but otherwise usually I wait until the end of the year, as I did last year, and find out what other people are saying are the best progressive rock and best metal albums of the year, and then I go and make a list of a bunch of them and check out several of them anyway, or check them all out and make a list of several that I'll actually like to buy. I did actually get most of the ones that I checked off from last year. I watched a bunch of videos and made notes of, I think I picked 12 albums and I got most of them. That was 2022 albums though that I bought in 2023. These are the albums that I actually bought in 2023. So let me just say a few words about each of them. Alright, I've shifted them around a little bit. Here we go. So the first one, this was actually released, I think it was in January this year. This is Damonix's third album, Making Sure. This is a progressive rock band. However, it is not really all that much rock. There are certainly parts that are a progressive rock band, not particularly rocky, but there are a lot of parts in here that are more like orchestrated music or not rock music. We find some of the key instruments being piano and saxophone, as well as percussion and drums, for example, or bass. Often the guitar is not really so much forward in the mix. Still, though, there are moments with some excellent guitar solos. This is Damonix's third album, and the band consists of Guy Manning doing vocals and lead and backing vocals, keyboards, acoustic guitar instruments, that kind of thing. Merrick Arnold, saxes, keyboard and additional keyboards, and Sean Timms, keyboards, backing vocals, programming. These are three masterful musicians who have been involved in a lot of different bands. There was also, I think it was, oh shoot, somebody Marsh. I'm getting confused with a hockey player right now. Brad Marsh. It's not Brad Marsh. Somebody Marsh was a bass player on the first two albums. He doesn't appear on this one. I really liked Damonix's first two albums, so I did not want to miss this one here. Recently, I've been seeing on Facebook Guy Manning posting that when this album was released, it received a lot of very good reviews. However, by the end of the year, it doesn't seem to be showing up on many people's lists for albums of the year. When I first got it, of course I had to get the Damonix album, but there were at the time other things coming through the door, and so it got kind of lost in the shuffle. I gave it a listen to, just, okay, that's what it's about. I kind of went back to it maybe once or twice, and then I didn't get around to it until here near the end of the year. And so listening to it here at the end of the year, I really felt like, wow, so this is what the album was like. And it's actually a very wonderful piece of work. If you like progressive music, maybe rock is the base, but I call it more progressive music than progressive rock. Lots of good textures and atmospheres, very meaningful storytelling lyrics, lots of saxophone and keyboard. You might want to check it out because for me, Damonix is kind of a special band. And the very sad thing is, I think Guy Manning was a little disappointed. He put a lot of effort into writing the music for these three albums here, of course working together with the other musicians. And he said this might very well be the last Damonix album, so a trilogy. Well, if it's a trilogy, that's great. I love trilogies, and it's a wonderful trilogy, all three albums. Anyway, Damonix's Making Sure. So this album was given to me during the year. The band's name is Red 32. The album is Red 32. It was given to me by Steve Bonino, who does lead vocals and bass on here. He probably does some other stuff too. This album started out as Tony Romanero. Oh gosh, I'm going to get his name all wrong now and I can't see it fast enough. But anyway, maybe Tony Romanero was going to do his second solo album, and he teamed up with the usual musicians. I think he'd worked with them on the first album, and as everybody started contributing to the writing, he just decided, or they all just decided, let's make it a band effort and call it Red 32. This is an interesting album. It has, again, it's progressive rock musicians writing music, but these are not like lengthy progressive rock compositions. They are shorter songs, but they do stray outside of your typical regular short song borders. There are various, there's some lighter ones, there's some that are a little bit darker, a little bit heavy. There's not so much I find as like particularly complex or difficult to listen to, but it's just interesting the arrangements of the music sometimes, the way some different instruments will come in or how they will transition into a different part. When I listen to the album, each time I listen to it, I find myself thinking, yes, I really enjoy listening to it. But amongst all the things that I've been bringing home this year, I tend to gravitate more towards other things. So listening to this again here at the end of the year, once again I was reminded that this is actually a unique and interesting album, and thank you once again, Steve Bonino, for sending it to me. While we are talking about albums that were given to me, this is Hammerhead, Lords of the Sun. Now Hammerhead, I did a video about them talking about their history and their other albums. They were part of the new wave of British heavy metal scene. They had a single that did fairly well in the charts. They had a bunch of demos, but they never actually released an album during the 1980s. And in the 1990s, they parted ways. I think in the 80s they split up, got together in the 90s briefly, parted ways again, but got back together again in the mid-2000s. And from there on, they decided, let's release an album of all our old recordings, which they did. And then they decided, let's record a new album of our old songs that we didn't record before, which they did. And then they decided to record a new album, and then one more new album, this one here, Lords of the Sun, coming out this year. Now this also might possibly be the final album of Hammerhead, simply because the lads are getting up there in the years. I know Buzz Elliott, guitarist, he is still a busybody, he is very active doing things, so if there is another album to come after this, it's probably going to be because Buzz Elliott is pushing for it. But anyway, a new wave of British heavy metal, traditional heavy metal style album, clean vocals, very strong vocals, you know, great metal riffs, nothing that is too harsh on the ears if you don't like your more extreme metal styles. If you like that kind of early 80s sound, but you know, modern day 2023 compositions, there it is. And the first, I think it's the first 3 tracks actually form, well, there are 2 or 3 tracks on here anyway that actually form one long composition, so kind of dipping their toes a little bit in progressive territory. But yeah, basically your traditional heavy metal, new wave of British heavy metal, modern day album, Lords of the Sun by Hammerhead. Another album that was given to me, I bought the very first one, damn it, I bought that one. This is Kinetic Element. I don't remember how many albums they've done now. This might be their 4th or possibly 5th album. This is Chasing the Lesser Light, came out earlier this year, I think it was in March. It was given to me by guitarist Peter Matukniak. Peter has played in a bunch of different bands, and he usually ends up just sending me a copy of one of his discs so I can make a video reviewing it and as well type a review for Prog Archives. So Kinetic Element are basically actually led by Mike Visaggio. I'm sorry, Mike, I still don't know if it's G or G. But anyway, he is the keyboard player and the main composer on here. Kinetic Element's style is like your classic 70s prog style. You can hear a lot of like ELP in here, you can hear some Yes, maybe you can hear a bit of Rush. They write some longer, more complex compositions. There are lots of really awesome organ solos and other keyboard solos as well. Peter Matukniak provides some very great guitar playing. He has a very unique style, and I think his style has kind of slightly disappeared into the mix of the overall band, which is pretty cool. I mean, it means he can kind of disguise himself a little bit and still pull off some great work. So if you're interested in this kind of classic early 70s style progressive rock, maybe you should check out Kinetic Element. This one here, Chasing the Lesser Light. I made a video talking about this album earlier on in the year. Maybe I should put links to these videos. Maybe that's not a bad idea. Okay, this is Mystery, a progressive rock, a little bit heavy progressive rock sometimes, band from Quebec. Redemption, I don't know if this is their 10th album or something like this. Mystery were a band I checked out in about 10 years ago. I picked up 2 of their albums from the 2000s because their lead vocalist, Benoit David, later became the lead vocalist for Yes on their Fly From Here album. So I was curious, and I quite liked the albums, and I always thought I should get another Mystery album. And with each Mystery album that was released after that, it always ended up near the top 100 albums of the year on Prog Archives, and always got very strong reviews. So I was thinking this year I really should get another Mystery album, and then this one dropped, so I ordered it. Mystery are, as I said, they're very melodic, modern day progressive rock sound that do have a bit of a heavy side to them. The compositions are long, but not like super long, not like 20 minutes or something like that, and they often do have some instrumental breaks with the keyboards or lead guitar. The bass sound is in there quite well. It's a pretty cool album. The only thing I would say is that it sounds very much like the other Mystery albums I own, so I have now 3 albums by Mystery that are basically the same style. They're playing the same style of music on each album. So if you like that kind of thing, that's cool, that's great. This is a good album. I like this album. I think I was just hoping to hear something a little bit different since this is 2023 and the other albums I own are from 15, 16, 17 years earlier than this. But anyway, there you go. Okay, now here's another band. This is called Seven and Pale. I think they're from Norway. I got their debut album and I really liked it. It's not that I liked every track, but I liked the overall sound of the band. They have a kind of garage band sound, but like a garage band playing progressive rock with guitars, drums, bass, and vocals. And then the vocals have a unique style to them, but then also they have, I think, 2 or 3 brass instruments here as well as a regular part of the band. So it's like a progressive garage rock band with brass. And really interesting. They have some very like a dark moments. They have some of that kind of, you know, odd herky-jerky type time signatures or playing style. Sometimes it's quite cacophonic, like everything just gets heavy and the saxophones are going nuts. Sometimes it's very light and sparse and moody. Just very interesting band. So I thought I should one day get another Seven and Pale album. I did not get the second one, so when the third one came out, I thought, that's it, I'm getting it. And yeah, this is actually quite similar to their first one. I heard a lot of people say the second one was not as good as the first, but this one is. So if you're interested in hearing an interesting band from Norway that have that sound that I just described, maybe check it out. I haven't picked my favorite tracks. I think there are actually only 4 on here. But so far, what is it? Sisyphus. Oh, that guy. You know who I'm talking about? Sisyphus. That guy. Yeah. That one might be my favorite so far. But yeah, interesting, and I quite like it. Okay, so here we have Uriah Heep's 25th studio album, Chaos in Color. They got this little badge with it for some reason. That's cool. Uriah Heep, of course, legendary band from the 1970s, up to 25 albums now. They went through some difficult time, I think, in the 1980s trying to find themselves. They got in Bernie Shaw on vocals and Phil Lanson on keyboards near the end of the 80s, and then I think they've released 9 albums of original material and 1 studio album covering their own songs since then. And they've been getting better and better. I think the next 4 albums throughout the 90s, they got better with each album, and then they took 10 years off because of the whole Napster thing. They were really suddenly wondering, what are we going to do? Can we release albums and make a living? But finally, I think 2009, they came out with Wake the Sleeper, and that was a really good, solid, heavy album. And since then, they have followed that style. So I think the last 5 Uriah Heep albums of original material have all had a very heavy organ sound, some good, hard, heavy guitar. I would probably call them more of a heavy rock band than a hard rock band. Lots of organ solos, and of course Bernie Shaw does a pretty decent job on vocals. So this album just follows along with that. You could make a playlist from the last 5 albums, I think, and pick out just the best tracks and have a really awesome playlist. So yeah, nice. I'm glad I got this one here. Okay, another old boys band coming out with a new album. Yes, Mirror to the Sun. And there we go, opening up 2 discs, because they basically did 1 disc that was meant to be the album proper, and then they had additional material which they put on the second disc. The running time could all have fit onto 1 disc, but they wanted to separate the album proper from the additional tracks. Now, I'll tell you, I got Yes's Heaven and Earth when it came out, and I was very excited about it, and after a while I kind of thought it's actually not that exciting. And so when The Quest came out, the album before this, I didn't really feel I needed to get it. However, I had a positive feeling about this, and I heard some very positive reviews about this, so I bought it and bought The Quest, and I actually do like them both. I think Steve Howe is basically in charge now, and the music is following along in that kind of traditional Yes way. It sounds like a Yes album. Admittedly, because of John Davison's vocals, they are a bit softer than John Anderson. Both of them always, sang very high, but John Davison has this very softer, cleaner sound, which takes away from some of the edge. And with all these kind of, new age, light and spirit type lyrics, it's not usually what I like to listen to. But anyway, I'm enjoying the music enough. There's enough adventurousness going on in the music to make it feel like Yes is still kind of chugging away out there. So yeah, it turned out to be much better than I thought. Inspired me to buy the previous album, and although I haven't listened to either of them all that much, when I do listen to them, it's mostly like, yeah, okay, certainly better than Heaven and Earth. So anyway, yes, Mirror to the Sky. Okay. So this was actually the year of me picking up a lot of new releases by old bands, not only from 2023, but also 22 and 21. And I even made a couple of videos talking about that. And so one of the ones that came out this year, of course, was Metallica's 72 Seasons. And I have not bought a Metallica album since the Black Album. I have skipped all of the other ones after that. Just I didn't feel any reason to get them. However, I started getting a feeling maybe I might like this one. Some people's reviews at the beginning were kind of lukewarm, but they grew more positive as the year went on. And I finally felt, I think it was in August, I finally felt, let me just get the darn thing. And I'm really pleased with it. I talked about this in another video. For me, for a person whose favorite albums are Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, and Master of Puppets, this feels like listening to the band that made those albums, only, some decades later. Of course, different bass player, but everyone else is the same. And it just feels like it. There's that, some parts it has a kind of Kill 'Em All thrash feel to it. Some parts maybe more of a Black Album feel to it. Some parts, I don't know, maybe it's from the Load Reload era, not sure. But overall, this just feels like a Metallica album. It's not better than any of the first 3. I don't know if it's better than any of the other albums, but it is overall like, okay, this is Metallica. This is what I should expect when I buy a Metallica album. It's good. The only real thing about it that still kind of bugs me is the bass drum, or the kick drum in here, is really forward in the mix. So I feel once I notice it, I can't stop noticing it. And then it kind of almost takes over. Like the bass guitar is somewhere behind the bass drum. Okay, so I'm hearing the bass drum thumping away more than I'm hearing the bass. But aside from that, I think it's a pretty decent album, this far down the line for Metallica. Well done, guys. Good enough. Good enough. Okay, and then another old band from the 80s that I never actually listened to in the 80s is Overkill. And I only bought one of their albums maybe 3-4 years ago, and I thought it's pretty good. I'm going to have to get more albums by Overkill sometime. And I was thinking about them this year, and then I heard that they had dropped a new album, and so I thought, okay, I'll just get the new one and see how it is. So this is Scorched, and I really like it. This is the kind of album I like because there is variation. They're known as a thrash metal band, an East Coast thrash metal band from the 80s, but it's not thrash metal all the way through. And with the other album I have too, which is Under the Influence? Years of Decay? Years of Decay. Both of those, they have some songs that are thrashy, or they have some songs that have thrashy parts in, but they also have a bit of like doom, they have a bit of groove. There's even a little bit of Iron Maiden feel in one of the songs here. So like each song is quite distinct from the others, which I really like, because a lot of extreme metal bands tend to have a really good sound with lots of cool riffs and great this and that, but after listening to the album a couple of times, you still don't remember which track is which. Whereas this one here, it's pretty easy to start thinking, the part that has that in it, or the song that has that in it, that's that one. And the song where it does this and that part, that's that one. You can start to differentiate right from the beginning. So very pleased with this one, and my Amazon shopping cart has also now had 2 or 3 more Overkill albums dropped in, and I've been watching Sea of Tranquility talking about ranking the albums of Overkill, where there are just so many, there's over 20. So Pete Pardo and one other fellow are just picking their top 10 favorites. So from those, I have picked out 2 or 3 and dropped them in my shopping cart for whenever it is I have money again. So Overkill, Scorched, yes, very nice. Very, very happy with this one. Okay, I'm wearing the t-shirt Ningen Isu, Japan's kind of old school metal band in a way. They follow the 1970s heavy rock style, but of course in a modern fashion. Also, they do get a little bit close to thrash metal or speed metal in places anyway from time to time. 2 vocalists, all lyrics sung in Japanese, and basically their themes are Buddhist heaven, Buddhist hell, as well as things like motorcycles, gambling, aliens, alien abduction, various things like that. This album here is their 23rd, isn't it? It's their 23rd studio album since they first formed. Well, they formed in 87 and they released their first EP in 89 and first full-length album in 1990. So they've been chugging away since then, popping out an album every year or every other year. This is Shikisokuseiku. Always have to remember that. Shikisokuseiku, which basically means that matter is void. And the continuation of this is void is matter. It's from a Buddhist chant. I think it's a chant anyway. There's a thing. I've seen it. I've heard it. But anyway, that's what that's from. And this, yeah, is a typical Ningen Isu album. This is a band that has evolved their style, or that revolved their style over the course of the first maybe 23 years. But sometime in the early 2010s, they kind of went back to being a more metal sounding band. They lowered, down-tuned their guitars, and since the last 3 or 4 albums, I feel there hasn't been much evolution in their style. They're basically in their comfort zone now, and each album is more or less not a surprise of what you're going to hear on it. There are no surprises. Although there is one track on here that actually has an acoustic guitar solo in it, which is something that is pretty unusual for them, so that was actually a surprise. Very good, solid album if you like this kind of like a old school heavy metal style from the 70s with modern recording techniques and going a little bit speed metal at moments, all in Japanese. Whatever I said about it, it is a very decent album anyway. Certainly I don't plan to miss any of their albums, and I have all of them here. Okay. A band whose last album was 2018. La Chinga, a hard rock band from Vancouver, putting out their 4th album. I was eager to hear this one because I have their first 3 and I really like them. So, their 4th album. Now, This is a very good solid hard rock album. It is even a little bit heavy in places, and because this was written during the pandemic lockdown period, there is a bit of a darker feeling to this album than is on their previous ones. Thinking about how I would rank this album, let's say, my feeling, the idea came to mind was, imagine you have a vanilla ice cream and you put some, for the first album, you put some chocolate brownies around it. That's the first album. For the second album, you put some chocolate sauce on it. And the third album, you put some caramel sauce on it. What about the fourth album? What are you going to do? Well, you put some fudge sauce on it. And so what it is like you've got fudge chunks and caramel and chocolate, and now you've got fudge sauce. So yes, fudge sauce is not chocolate sauce, it's not caramel sauce, and it's not fudge chunks. It is fudge sauce, so it's different, but basically you're just adding another sweet, sticky liquid on top of the ice cream. So what I'm trying to say is that this album here doesn't bring anything really new and fresh to the table. It's very similar to what we've heard, but it is also a bit darker, and now we have a set of 4 really cool, heavy, hard rockin' albums by this band. They do really kick some whopping ass. So, Primal Forces by La Chinga, released on, what did we say it was? Ripple Records, that's it. Okay, and of course I made a video about this previously featuring some of the music from the album. I'll put a link in here somewhere. Alright, let's kind of pick up the pace a little bit. We're almost coming to the end. Cryptopsy, Quebec's technical, brutal death metal band as Gomorrah Burns. I recently said that listening to a Cryptopsy album is probably a lot like watching a train wrecking outside the window of your train being a bullet train which is speeding by. So everything is just kind of like... But if you have the ear for it and the patience, or if you like it like I do, you can listen to this album and pick out a lot of the details, pick out what the guitars are doing, what the bass is doing, what Flo Mournier's incredible drumming is doing, and Matt McGacky's vocals. Yes, they are harsh. There's lots of ripping, throat screaming and roaring going on, but actually he has very good vocal technique, and I really enjoy listening to it. So I really like the recent Cryptopsy releases, and this one here I think is really good. I've heard a lot of people say it is very good, but I actually heard one person say that it was nothing special. So whatever you think, I like it. Cryptopsy as Gomorrah Burns. Okay. It's also their first full-length album since 2011. Or 2012. They had a couple of EPs in between there, so it's welcome back, lads, welcome back. Okay, 2 more albums to go. This is The Enduring Spirit by Tomb Mold. Tomb Mold came out in 2015, starting out as an old school death metal band. They got a lot of attention, especially from their second and third albums, both of which I have, both of which I quite like. For this one here, they started to move their music in a more progressive direction, so we have some lighter, cleaner guitar parts, we have some kind of little bit jazzy feels or longer songs and more change-ups in the music, which is really great. 2 things that I'm not happy with about the album. One of them is the production sound. It's the sound I feel like where you put a Persian rug over the speakers, muting the tones a little bit, especially the higher tones, so I don't feel the kind of higher, sharper edges of the trebly parts don't come out so clearly, which is actually a disappointment considering that they actually put in some clean guitar parts. So we don't hear the treble tones so well, we don't hear the higher tones of the percussion or even some of the bass coming out so clearly. So that's a bit of a disappointment, since with the evolved music, more advanced music, I would like to hear that more clearly. Secondly, the vocals are the really kind of two-dimensional or one-dimensional type death metal vocals where it's just like and there's very little variation in notes, the enunciation. It's very difficult to understand what the words are. There are other death metal vocalists. I feel there's more feeling in their vocals and you can hear the words more clearly. Take a look at Matt McGachy of Cryptopsy. He has different approaches to extreme vocalizing styles, so you get some different styles depending on what he wants to do in the music, which to me makes it much more interesting. So very one-dimensional vocals, and the music is, the production quality is a little dull, but otherwise nice work on the musical development of this band. So who knows what the the next album will sound like. But there we go. Not my favorite Tomb Mold album, but interesting anyway. Okay, saved for last. This came out in, I think it was actually in May. This is Blood Ceremony's 5th album, The Old Ways Remain. I really got into Blood Ceremony this summer. I got this album and I got their 2nd album, Living with the Ancients, which I didn't have yet. And this is a band that changes from album to album. No one album sounds like the other. Starting out as a heavy stoner doom metal type band, getting heavier for the 2nd album, and then starting to come a little bit more like progressive by the 3rd album, exploring more other sounds from the late 60s and early 70s, and that really comes forward on here. It's like in some parts like late 60s pop mixed in with a kind of witchcraft rock and roll type sound. So we still get some of the kind of heavier riffs. However, it's not really like crushingly heavy, just the riffs are really cool. We have, of course, Aaliyah O'Brien on vocals, flute, and keyboards. We have Sean Kennedy doing the guitars. The band just sound really great. They've got some violin on one song. They've got some saxophone on one song, and I don't remember, there's one other song that's got something extra in as well. Just really an album full of variety and interesting music. Slightly a little bit dull in the production. I wish it sounded as good as their last 2 albums did production-wise, but not such a big deal because once you start listening to it, it just becomes really, really cool. Some people who really like their early stuff are starting to cool their jets a little bit, on this one here, because the heavy stoner doomy type style is fading away, and who knows what direction the band will go in the future. But for me, I like to see a band that is evolving and changing from album to album and trying to do something new and interesting. So Blood Ceremony, this might be one of my favorite albums, if not my favorite, out of all the ones I've talked about. And that's it. That's my 15 purchases of 2023. There were some others I wanted to get. There was like Ken Mode had one. Autopsy came out with a new one. I was very curious about that. There were other ones I heard about during the year. I haven't watched any videos of people talking about their best albums for 2023 because it's going to make me want to buy more albums, and I really can't afford to right now. But there you go. That's my stuff. I might come out with one more album for this. Oh, I might come out with one more video for this year. Maybe by the weekend. If not, I'll just wish you all a Happy New Year now and see you in the new year. Or I might come out with one more. Anyway, thank you for watching this one. See you in whatever video it is. Bye, folks. Take care.